and I'm glad we didn't have to play you in any more alumni games. You remember that one, Coach?
I sure do.
I mean,
it
was the first annual alumni game.
Yeah.
How many of y'all been back to one of those alumni games? Y'all are now.
Makes no prisoners, does it?
I mean, this. Right here's something I'm glad to see too. It gets foggy at Mossy Creek. I don't know whether y'all know where that statement came from, but years and years ago back here when the football field was back where it was, and there was nothing behind that, and it would get kind of foggy on Mossy Creek some nights, and some nights you couldn't see across the football field to see what was happening on the other side, and for some reason Carson always won when the fog rolled in on Mossy Creek. But Dad used to say, you know, it gets foggy at Mossy Creek, and I think that was coined for years and years. I just want to say, Coach, I'm glad we're being honored tonight, because I think it's time. And I, for one, appreciate being one of your old boys.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Dick, you got a story. I know you got 100 stories from the time y'all were traveling together and Miss Holt.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Maybe get up and face the camera over there, Coach.
They, the thing about Coach Holt, and not even my daddy, Coach Holt was my buddy, my friend, my boss, and he just had everything. Every aspect of his life was, and I loved him dearly. And he loved me, and I mean, we openly said that we loved each other. We went places and did things, and back in those days I smoked, and we went down to Georgia Southern, and we stopped at a Kentucky Fried Chicken place, and he was eating in the front seat, and he had a Dexlene shirt. You know, they were just wash and wear. That's the first thing I remember you could wash and just hang up and it dried in a few minutes. And I started smoking. And he said, give me one of them cigarettes. We was down in Georgia somewhere. He got one, and he couldn't smoke good, and he done like that, and he hit that Dexlene shirt, burned a hole about like that. He took that tie and put over it, you know, like that, and he said, Mama's gonna kill me. And he said, I'm gonna tell her, it's that dang Camel and them cigarettes. But just, we bought the bleachers for this gym, and we went to Kansas City. And we went down to catch an airplane, well, we went to St. Louis, excuse me, not Kansas City. Went to St. Louis, Missouri, and Miss Hope told me, she said, Frosty's never been on a plane now, but he's not going to admit that to you, so kind of look after him. So we was, and I said, Coach, we got on the plane, I said, you want to sit by the window? I said, I'm used to flying, I thought you might want to look out at something. And he said, no, you get over there. So we took off, and the stewardess came to feed us. And she said, y'all gonna eat? And I said, yes ma'am, I bet I will. Paul said, don't eat, we're going to a nightclub in St. Louis, so they're gonna entertain us. He said, don't eat nothing. He said, we'll be going to that nightclub out there. He said, probably watch the St. Louis Cardinals play tonight. Well, we got to St. Louis and nobody made us. We were up there in the airport and asking everybody, didn't know what. Finally this guy came that was with the bleacher company, Narragansett Bleachers. And he saw us, and he said, we're moving today, and we're moving out to Centralia. That's where our plan is. And he said, just hate it like we are, but said, you know, we jumped in the car with him, and driving to Centralia. And I said, Coach, we'll see the cards tonight. And I said, I'm full, too, from that good meal. We stopped at an old country store out there and got some bologna and moon pies and whatever. And we got checked into the hotel out there. I mean, it was like the old West, honest it was. And Coach Holt called that guy Uncle Joe on the desk. He said, Uncle Joe? He said, where could maybe a partner and I said, get us a little something to eat. And there was a beer joint across the street. and that was the only restaurant out there, I guess, in Centralia. And we went across over and they were playing pinball machines and everything. And Frosty said, could we get something to eat? And I said, we have delicious tenderloin sandwiches. Said, well, they brought us a big old piece of meat sticking out of 2 pieces of light bread. Wasn't no mayonnaise, no lettuce and tomatoes. Frosty said, just eat around that, Campbell, till you get to the bread. We went up to our room and laid there in that bed and laughed and cried. And, I mean, about how funny it was, and about us anticipating we were going to receive royal treatment and all that sort of thing. But we had just great times together. And he's just, next to my dad, he's just the greatest man I ever knew. I mean, he is a terrific person. I know all y'all love him. He recruited more than half of you, I guarantee you, when you visited here. I can remember Jerry Cannon, I'll tell this and sit down. We were recruiting Jerry so heavy and wanted him so bad, and Jerry, we were out in the hallway here in the old gym, and Jerry said, Coach Hope said, I'm going to be on Ray Mears' show tonight. And I said, oh my goodness. I said, we've lost him now. We won't get him. Frosty said, God just telling me you're going to Carson Newman. And so that night, at the old Channel 14, you had to have a special antenna, and I had to go to somebody's house. And Mears come on, they showed some films, him and John Ward and this and that. And then Ward said, we've got a special guest here tonight. Said, a young man from right here in Knoxville. He said, Coach Mears has said he's looked over the southeast, and this is the best guard he's seen. He said, none other than Jerry Cannon, Powell High School. And he flashed over and showed Mears and Jerry. And Mears started out, we've done this, and we've looked at you and this and that. And he said, Jerry, do you plan to go to college? And Jerry said, yes, sir, I'm going to Carson. Newman. That's Jerry said, Carson said, how God said this time you going to Carson. And you tell it on there. So, y'all got great stories about Coach Hope. He's unique and different. He could say things to boys that if I said that, I'm gone. I mean, boy never played for me. Coach Hope called everybody boy. He said, hey, boy. He had a boy who played first base here. Best fielder I believe I ever saw in baseball. But he got Tommy D. Hart. Some of y'all remember him coming in. Coach Hope asked that other boy, he said, you got a glove, boy? He said, no, sir, just got my scoop. He said, well, you better get a glove because you threw over there. That afternoon, I went to get my car to go home. That boy was chasing fly balls. I mean, he just had a way. And, the depth of it. And my son called him Uncle Frosty. He called Miss Hope Mama Hope. And my son's 40 years old today, but when he speaks to them, he talks about Uncle Frosty and Mama Hope. He just, Carson Newman is a great place, and I want to tell you guys something. I love you. I love all of you. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. And when they got this up today, I just didn't know how well it would be attended. But you see guys, I see 3 guys off the first year I was here in 58, 59. I mean, just, you've turned out and just made this a memorable moment in my life. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. It's just wonderful to see you and for y'all to see each other. I've never forgotten anybody and things. And I can go back to games and remember. I can remember our first team beat Austin Peay and Carson. And us listening to it on the radio on the way back to Nashville. I mean, just all kinds of things happened. But the one thing that Carson Newman had during my era, and he probably still does, is the character and discipline and pride you guys have. All of you have turned out well. All of you have had good jobs. Some of you retired. You've all done well. You were outstanding people. Everybody in this room overextended to coach. And we've had presidents of universities and everything else. I mean, out of you guys. And to be here today to pay tribute to this and to see each other is tremendous. And I think the shuffle offense and your character and discipline is why I'm here. And that's exactly why we're here. And it just did it to us. They put us on the map. So thank God for Overfall.
First of all, it's good to see everybody. This is a great event, Coach. Thank David, Bill, and whoever else had something to do with it. I was a very lucky person. Thank Coach Holt and Coach Campbell for getting me to Carson Newman, and for my brother, who really kind of dragged me with him and helped me out. He kind of took me under his wing and took care of me. You know, I really do appreciate that. You know, our era really was based on a couple of things. Coach Campbell's philosophy, which still works today, was play great defense and take care of the ball. I mean, of course, today's game is a little bit different. They do play good defense, but, you know, we would go 2 or 3 games without turning it over as an individual. But now people just turn it over all the time, it seems like. But anyway, since we were kind of based on defense, I guess I have a few defensive stories, so to speak. Of course, number one, I think when you say defense in the era that I played in, you have to think of Gerald Newman. He was undoubtedly the most inspirational player that I probably played with. I wasn't known for my defense. Coach Campbell would say, now look, bro, you hear that bell? So you got to shoot the ball. But of course, everybody else could do everything else. But Gerald, I would try to play defense, and I mean, 2 or 3 minutes into the game, you turn around and Gerald's down there and sweat's just pouring off of him, and he's down there getting after it. And so really, I think he really was an inspiration to all of us about the way he played. And Coach we always had one player on the other team that, you know, Gerald had to break down. And I don't think there was ever a player that he guarded that he didn't break down somebody, which allowed us to really be successful. But a couple of other defensive stories. Number one, like you said, Oglethorpe. You know, Oglethorpe, we went down there, and they would pick us up at the half and really just get after us. And I think Chris and some of the people that played then, they would dribble the ball down the floor and pass it to the other guard and turn their back because they didn't want it. They'd come back to us. And then the coach would put in a sub, like he'd put in one sub and 3 people would come off. And he'd say, no, 2 of you have to go back. You know. But Oglethorpe did kind of set the tone for us, and we started getting after it. And I remember one time, I think it might have been in the VSAC or somewhere. I can't remember what team it was, but I know that Coach makes the assignments, you know, and then it got down, and Albert was the only one that didn't have an assignment. And Coach was like, oh yeah, that's right. Well, this old boy, you probably can't stop him anyway. He scored about 26 or whatever, and of course, that's the way he would. UT Martin. Yeah, I mean, he got after it, and that old boy just played. And another defensive story was about Jerry Cannon. We played up in Quincy, Illinois, in a tournament, and a guy by the name of Eamon Evans, they played Kentucky State in the semifinal, and he scored 36. And of course, you know, we always like to get that challenge from the coach. Of course, you never did give it to me, as a defensive player. But anyway, you know, we don't know who's going to guard Eamon Evans, but we know he's got to be stopped. And so, Coach, you know, does the same thing with Jerry, kind of like, man, he scored 36 last night. You just do the best you can. And of course, the kid scored 6 points now. And what happened? We played a switching defense, especially out front. Anytime 2 guards cross, we automatically switched. Automatically. So Jerry was the other guard, and I was here. But that particular night, we never switched, because every time Eamon Evans would come by, Jerry would be right there. And he only got 6 points. I think I switched twice, and I fouled him, and he scored. It's the only way he got 6 points. But those are great times when, you know, we called on our defense to really pull us out a lot of times. Another time we played Western Carolina over here, and they had a 1-2-2 zone, and you just couldn't get into it. Coach would try to get the ball in the middle, and we moved around and hold it and whatever. And finally, we got ahead of them. We just barely got ahead of them. It might have been that 5 overtime game. And we got ahead of them, and so we just held the ball, no clock. So we held the ball, pulled them out. And so they got into man-to-man, and they really got after us. And we called timeout. And Coach said, Roy, go down there and tell them to get back in the zone. We promise we won't hold it. But defense was what we were built on, and toughness, and we appreciate what you did for us, Coach, and we appreciate the memories.
I appreciate what y'all do.
Coach, we understand you've, I've been talking to Helen a little bit, and I understand you've got some big plans coming up here.
Well, my head, yeah.
Yeah, well, and when I tried to call the house the other day, you carried a load of stuff to the dump. You're refurbishing some things. We want you to have a little something here, maybe to fit into the
Well, it
floor
certainly will.
and go into the new den or whatever you're refurbishing. As a token of our appreciation. And I also want you to tell the story. I'll wish you to.
Okay.
You don't remember?
Yeah, you gotta tell that one.
Oh,
But I'm gonna tell one, I'm gonna roast you a minute here first.
Good, let me have it.
Well, okay. Last spring, we were fortunate enough to induct Roy into the Hall of Fame. And Coach was his presenter. The presenter's supposed to get up and say some things about the inductee. I was sitting back at another table with a guy that does public relations for the college. And most of the presenters, they get up and they say a little something, and then the inductee gets up, says his thing. Well, Coach got up there and he just went on and on and on, and when he finished, he already got from college, leaned over to me and said, which one of those two is going into the Hall of Fame? I said, well, the guy that just spoke went in 94, it's the other guy that just, we appreciate you. Tell that other story.
Well, Coach Holt and I, we were going down to play Georgia Southern, and there was a boy in Greenville, South Carolina. I'd heard he was a good player. So I asked Coach Holt, I said, let's you and I go down and watch him play. And Jack Dyer drove the bus, so he was going to take the team on down, and somebody else was going with him, maybe. Laura, you remember making that? Anyway, Day was playing, but
Yeah.
I think you were. And so when we got ready to leave, Miss Holt took me off the side and said, y'all want to stay in the motel down there tonight? And I said, yeah, I'll probably Holiday Inn there in Greenville. She said, well, listen, you check Frosty's hat. And when he leaves a hat, we lost more hat. Check for everything. Said, he won't know, don't tell him I told you. So we spent the night, got up early the next morning, and I started even going through the bed linen. And I looked in the drawers and everything. Coach had his hat on, I think he had it on for his pants. And he said, I said, Coach, don't lose that hat. And I said, well, I don't know so. He said, I'm always leaving the hat. So anyway, we got everything. We checked out in the car and started on down to Georgia Southern. We got down there and boys went to the motel, and I was going around checking rooms, see everybody was in their room, how they were doing all. In the first room I went in, the phone rang in there. I thought the boys getting a phone call, some girl back there. And W.A. Wright answered the phone. He said, yes, sir, he's in here right now. I said, who is it? He said, Coach Holt. And I'll say this. I got her, I said, hello? He said, what's the name of that damn motel we stayed in last night? I said, Holiday Inn. I said, what is it? He said, left my teeth in there on the sink. Lord, we went in and got back through the way and pulled up in that little wheel. We jumped out the bus and went there and got the teeth down there. So I said, I told Miss Holt, I said, I got his hat, he had everything, but I couldn't guard his teeth. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Everybody got some Frosty stories, I got one myself, back when I was in banking. I took Frosty and Benita and Jim and Edna Holt's Evans, sister, out for dinner one night. Used to have a restaurant on top of the high called the Bottle Door, and a pretty nice restaurant. So I took them up there and every time I entertain anybody around here, they come around before we got started and asked if anybody wanted to drinks. And hardly ever do I have any of my good Baptist buddies that partake. And so that night it was going about the same way, and the lady came around and asked if anybody wanted to drink cocktails or something. And nobody said anything, and so I said, well, I think we got a bunch of Baptist teetotalers here, and we probably don't. And before I got that out of my mouth, Frosty said, well, not exactly. So he ordered him a glass of wine. He had
One defensive story for Coach.
Good.
We were at Camp Lejeune playing in their Christmas tournament. And they had a forward there that had been the scoring leader in the country the year before, playing at Holy Cross. I think his name was O'Sullivan or O'Sullivan. So Coach said, said last year he averaged 35 points, and this year he's averaging in the mid-30s. Says, I want you to guard him. So, okay. So I guarded him, and I really got after him. At halftime, he had 3 points. We were well ahead of him. I said, Coach, he's overrated. I got him, no problem. So the second half started. Coach said, same thing. Says, you guard him. Okay. So I got out there, and they went to the 4 corners. All 4 of their players were in the corners, and he was in the middle, and I was on in. We played one-on-one, and he turned me inside out 5 times down the floor. Coach called a timeout. He put everybody else on the team on him. Nobody could guard him. And they ended up beating us, I think, by 2 points. And he got 34.
You know who gave me the name Frosty Hope. We were doing I made a cut under the basket and practiced on that far end of the gym, and I faked, and he knew Hartley, he could jump out of the gym, and he jumped on my back, and as he jumped on my back, I went up, and Coach Hope said, look at that damn you buck. And it stuck. So many tales. I just appreciate having the opportunity to play with Coach Campbell and the guys, and to see you guys come back. I don't know how y'all used to come back and support us. We appreciate that. I think the people who have gone on, the Blank brothers, we went out to Kansas City, and Adrian and Henry Blank and Lawrence Tarr and Buddy Catlett and Joe Bill Sloan, all those guys would come out there. And
J.C.
Bill would come out there, and that meant so much. The cheerleaders and things, they didn't have any money to go. But the most inspirational moments was the first time we went to Kansas City. We hadn't gone, but the tournament was here, and we played Union University opening round here. And folks, we were down 16 points at halftime. We walked back up on the floor, and the place was packed, and the student body started hollering Eagle Bait. And folks, they stayed on their feet and hollered Eagle Bait until we went ahead. We beat them. And then we had to play Christian Brothers the next night. We had a good ball team, and we trailed most all the ball game. We were 1 point down with just a few seconds to go. Gil Luttrell got a cramp in his leg, and he fell on the floor. I'm talking like with 4 seconds to go, and I'll never forget Ralph Stout with timeout, and he put Charlie McKinney in for Gil Luttrell, and they were ahead by 1 point. Christian Brothers, and on the inbounds pass, Charlie McKinney stole the ball, rolled down, and as he shot it, buzzer goes off and it goes in, and he goes, wow. That was fantastic. I think of Chris Jones playing Tusculum. Well, back before that, at Tusculum, I'll tell that on the script. My freshman year, we went to Tusculum, and we had a perfect Eastern Division DSAC record. And we go to Tusculum, and they're in that little gym. I've never been to Greenville, but we drive up on the bus, and there's a big crowd out there. And there was some confusion, but I remember talking, the fire marshal was there, and the gym was packed, and they said, but you got to let them in, that's the team. he'd already closed it out. We walk in there and they have 55-gallon drums sitting around the gym. And then they have this big gong of a thing, and you couldn't talk. Coach Campbell had to write out the instructions to us. Even when we dressed underneath the gym, he had to write out the instructions at halftime. And they beat the snot out of us. But anyway, we came up here, and Chris got 53 on
You got about 30 in one eye.
But anyway.
But they didn't plan a zone, we didn't have to run that shovel. We got there about 30 foot, that kick legger.
Great memories.
Going over, didn't we?
Great memories. I think you need to tell them about Albert and what he did in your bed and what you did under his door, and you chased him across the walk here with the fire extinguisher and coming back. He was down in the three-point stance, and Dr. Myers in his car, and you take the fire extinguisher and give him his car a wash. I think you need to tell him about that. Remember right, Albert?
I'm glad he don't get into it.
Thank you much. Proud to be here.
Hey, when Chris was playing one night, somebody just got the scorebook on fire. They said, we lost the score. I said, Chris, can you tell you when everybody got
I appreciate the opportunity to be here and hearing some stories. Of course, remember back a long time. And Coach Campbell, we certainly do appreciate you and what you stood for all these years. And you've helped make us. We thank you for that. I was, some of you know, I was president of a college down in Georgia. Well, with that, I meet with a lot of legislatures and people in Georgia and Georgia government. I kept going to hear this one guy being talked about. And I went up to him and I said, sir, have you ever heard of Dick Campbell? He said, you went to Carson, Newman, didn't you? He said, my name's Garland Penposter.
Oh, my
He was the leading state senator in Georgia. He has been there for years, and as soon as I mentioned your name, he knew immediately that I had gone to Carson Newman. And he said he was a great friend, but he is a great politician in the state of Georgia. Garland Penposter, who was at Oglethorpe, who wore us out. But I also think I want to talk about Oglethorpe just a minute. We went down there, and Monty Montgomery was driving the bus. Monty Montgomery was driving the bus. Well, Coach Campbell was trying to give us instructions for the game. Here's Monty with his hand up. I mean, Coach Campbell kept talking. Here's Monty back there for 10 minutes with that hand up. Well, Monty had sneaked up stairs and watched Oglethorpe practice. And he was going to come back and tell Coach Campbell what they were doing. Of course, Coach Campbell was telling us what they were already doing, but Monty, the bus driver, was telling. But down there, we would stay in this old place. They were closed down for Christmas on top of the swimming pool. And you could step down through the cracks and hear it hit down the thing. The thing I remember is old Vic. Vic had keys to everything, remember? He was the biggest rogue I've ever seen. He could get in anything at any time. I roomed with Vic. He had a set of keys, I'm sure it was that big. And at 12 o'clock at night, you could hear the piano playing over in the Fine Arts Building. It's supposed to be closed at 10. Well, Vic could take those keys, he could open any key on this campus. I mean, any door on this campus, Vic could go over and play. But at Oglethorpe, he had some of those keys too. He wandered around that building we were staying in. He found a skeleton. Do you remember this? He brought that skeleton from the anatomy class down there to our room where we were staying. And they were feeding us. And we all liked to eat. Gil Lefterle had 18 packs of butter on his tray. And I remember Coach Campbell looked at him and said, you big hog. But Oglethorpe has a lot of memories. But I remember the first year I was here, we went to 4 Christmas tournaments during Christmas. We had the most dissension I've ever seen. We had too much togetherness. And I think Coach Campbell learned after that. Remember, we went to Western Carolina, we went to Quantico, we went to Oglethorpe, and we went to some other places. 4 of them we went to Christmas. He said he'd never go. I think he got tired of seeing us during that time. But the Christmas times that we were together, and those of us who went over to Pembroke, who else went to Pembroke? Remember going to Pembroke over there with Paul Brewer? You ever drive Paul Brewer?
I did.
Paul Brewer.
Luttrell was in there, I'll guarantee you.
Paul Brewer is a great friend of mine, but he was young then, he was a young PhD. He wouldn't wear deodorant. And he wouldn't turn the heat on. And we like to froze and got smelled out the whole time going over to that tournament with Paul Brewer driving. I don't know whether you ever do that, Coach, but we all fought coming back, not to have to ride the ball. But some great memories and great stories that we all of us had. But again, we go back to you and what you have meant to us individually, and we certainly do appreciate it and we do love you.
Vic, when I saw you walk in, I remember going home with you one Saturday, spending the night with you, and we had a Sunday afternoon practice, I think, before a Monday game. So we dawdled around like we could do, but we found ourselves starting up here too late. And on the drive up here today, I remember thinking, I think you had a kind of a forest green Chevy, didn't you? Or a Chevy or something. Yeah, right.
Yeah, I've been in that thing, yeah, 10.
At least, I thought about that when we passed Helmets today on the way up here. I thought, I'll never see this practice. And I think maybe the practice was at 4 o'clock, and I think we got here like at 1 minute till, and I was sweating, and you weren't. So you haven't changed a bit, but it's great to see you. Here in Jack Dyer, of course, I've lived many of these stories that I've heard tonight, but how many of you were on the bus the night we were coming back from LNU doing 360s down the peak, the mountain up there?
Front seat, me and Jerry King.
You know, I just remember thinking, I was about in the middle of the bus, and I think luck would have it that as we were lined up with the road, we passed a log truck that had stopped, right, Jim? Yeah. And then we kept doing 360s, and finally slammed into the cut side instead of going over the bank. And the bus was headed back in the direction that we were coming. So about the first thought I had was a memory of fate worse than that befell a team at some point in time. Coach Campbell, there was some problem with, I think, a team trip. And it wasn't so good earlier on in the early days of the school. But at any rate, I don't see how we lived through that. I remember Jack Dyer kind of standing up, you know, doing this with the wheel. And as the bus came to a rest, we all kind of took a deep breath. Jack got off the bus. Remember what he did? Bam! He busted the bottom of his pants right on that ice. And so I don't remember how he got the bus started, but we wound up coming back through Knoxville on the way home. We conned somebody into stopping to eat down there at a good place. Otherwise, we would never have got to do that. Regis, what?
It took 2 hours to clean the bus out after we got there.
Yeah, it did. I don't remember the 18 packs of butter, but I do remember another version of the hog. I hope we don't get through this tonight. I hope we don't get through this tonight without telling another story. So I get a signal that one's coming later on, so I'll pass that one up. I sent an email to Carson Newman, somebody that was helping David get together, and practically every person who